All right, Donna's here. Terry, Elliot, welcome everybody. My name is Rulon Brown, and we're just going to give just a couple minutes for more people to get out of the waiting room into the meeting now. As we're doing that, I'm going to kind of go through here and just say hello. Um, and yeah, this is good. So thank you everybody for being here today. I know there is a sports ball event today that you're taking time away to learn about sax stuff. So I hope that we'll keep this just as engaging as a halftime show, and just engage whatever kind of questions you have about saxophone care and how to keep that instrument playing well. Um, Looks like a majority of folks are in right now, so I'm just going to start diving in. My name is Rulon Brown. I'm very grateful to be here today. I want to give a special thanks to Nathan Nab and the Saxophone Clinic online class for hosting. Oftentimes, when I'm giving talks like this, it's to band director groups or repair tech groups, people who are more general in their approach to instruments, teaching them, repairing them, and caring for them. And so it's really a pleasure. I love the time when I get to work, talk and engage directly with sax players on saxophone, because that was my first love musically. So I'm happy to be here, and I want to also say that as we go today, go ahead and just ask questions in the chat at any time. Nathan, who's kind of behind the scenes today, he's going to be looking at those, and I want to try to have this be a very candid and interactive conversation. So at any time, if you want to share thoughts, questions, concerns about saxophone care and things that might trouble you or frustrate you, just add it to the comments, and we'll do our best to get to that today, or we might follow up on it in other talks. And speaking of other talks, if you're a teacher or if you have a relationship with a local music store or anything like that, and you would like this kind of information shared, this is what I live to do. I love this. This is my passion in life. So feel free to message me anytime, and we can try to bring this to your community. Also, in the chat to help you see where that's at and get acquainted with that, since we're going to be engaging through chat today, I'm going to put up some resources. These are all free community resources, really cool things happening. So I'm going to just hit that into the chat right now. Bring your attention to this. First up is the Wright State Saxophone Festival. This is hosted by Shelly Jago. She's a fantastic saxophone educator. This is happening in person, I believe, but also it has some online components. You might want to check that out. I want to call attention to the International Saxophone Academy. They have just started quarterly competitions for young artists and older artists. And there's some really great prizes, including some stuff from Kiwis, my company. So thank you to Jeffrey Luang, who helped get that going. Check out the International Saxophone Academy. It truly is a fantastic global resource that's developing. And then the Wisconsin Saxophone Clinic, that's Nikki Roman, and she is hosting that all online this year. It's free. So be sure to dig into that. Tell your students, really excellent opportunity for younger artists. And then also Lock the Sax Down, the hashtag Lock the Sax Down. If you're not familiar with this, this is free downloadable sheet music and backing tracks composed by Jenny Watson. She's a saxophonist and composer. She does really beautiful lyrical work. She's been collaborating with UK saxophonist Emma McPhillamy, and they've been putting out this entire series of Lock the Sax Down during the lockdowns of COVID. It's all free, and right now they're actually opening up a new competition where you can download the music and the recordings, and you can upload it for a chance to win other prizes. It's their Valentine's Day competition. So be sure to check that out. That's a really cool music. And I know a lot of folks in this community are already engaged with that, but I wanted to, again, call it out. And then this is a new resource that I've just started. It's actually keyleaves.com/sax lesson. And right now there's a series of videos, downloads, including a free jazz etude by Steve Cortica. Steve is an amazing arranger and composer. He did arrangements for Lady Gaga, Tony Bennett, just a killer jazz saxophonist. and he has put together a free jazz etude over Autumn Leaves, a great jazz standard. That's available for free download. So those are just some free sax resources I just want to draw your attention to, because you might not be aware, and it's free to access and free to share. And then also, if you have any suggestions for that website, the last one I mentioned, feel free to message me. We are looking for community content that is of high value. So yes, it will be shared on YouTube. And let's go ahead and dig into some other things. As I mentioned, this is going to be candid. It's going to be interactive. So ask your questions in the chat at any time. And I want you to know some of the assumptions that I have going into this conversation. I'm assuming that if you're here on Super Bowl Sunday, you're a serious saxophonist, or you're at least seriously committed to this passion you have for the instrument, that you're invested in your equipment and your training, and that you want to improve. And that's what the assumption I'm going to make, that we're kind of at that level where everybody's really mentally engaged. And then, as I said earlier, we're not going to focus on like the nitty gritty of repair. That's bench repair. That's when you take it to your hired contracted expert. That's the people you take it to, you hand over your baby, and they do the bench repair. They have the tools, they have the deep training and expertise, and they can care for your machine to help you sound your best. Today, we're going to be focusing on lap repair. You're traveling, you have your sax, you're on stage, something goes sideways, or it's just not feeling right. What can you do with the sax in your hands, in your lap, to keep it playing well, keep it maintained well? What can you do on a daily basis and on an emergency basis to try to keep your sax loving you the way that you love it? So that's kind of where we're starting today. And I'm going to go quickly into some history of who I am, where I come from, and how I get into these topics. I'm going to try to go very quickly over this, and then we'll get into some specific care topics and more Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Let me see if I can do that now. And everybody should see a Zoom screen meeting. And now I will present. Let me know if you cannot see this screen. I hope Nathan somebody hop in if you can't see this screen. But today it's Sax Love with myself, Rulon Brown. And we are going to dig into a bunch of topics, but first, who am I? What's this about? I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, a small town, but I was really lucky that I got to go to a cool high school, and I eventually became a professional musician. But before that, my first actual payroll job in Alaska, people think of it as this, but I was living in Anchorage, the big city. I was an apprentice to John Kagerer. He was affectionately known as the Horn Doctor at Alaska Music and Sound. Really fantastic repair tech. He trained at Allied School, and he had made his entire career working with companies like Getson and others. And then he just moved to Alaska because he likes his planes and his cabins, and he's just an outdoorsy dude. So at age 14, I started apprenticing with John in woodwind repair. And it was an amazing opportunity for me as a sax geek. I had fallen in love with the instrument, and I wanted to know more about it. And I was lucky that I got this apprenticeship. And so he put me to work fixing instruments. And most of them were rental or school band instruments from places as far flung as Barrow. This is the northernmost point in the United States. And it's a good example of what we call a bush village, or a very, very rural Alaskan village. Now, from the looks of it, Barrow, Alaska doesn't look like much, but it has millions and millions of dollars, or at least it did when I was there growing up, in oil monies and other industries. So the school districts there are just flush they were flush with cash. Right now, it's a pretty hard time with the prices of oil going down. But so they would send their instruments into the Horn Doctor, and they would be all sorts of things. They'd be brand new Yamahas, old Mark 6s, Martins, Khans, Kings, you name it. And this would happen in all the different, remote villages across Alaska. They were very flush with cash. They had a lot of great instruments. They had robust band programs, kids playing, and they would ship them in by bush plane. small aircraft, and then I had the great opportunity to learn how to repair fixing up these horns, which was fantastic. And then I went on later to become a professional saxophonist. I started recording. I moved to Seattle. I went to school. I did interactive artworks, uh, visual artworks, artworks inspired about the American dream. Got a bachelor's degree, did music about a river. And then most recently, I did a prog rock project. I'm not sure if you can hear this, but this is a recent album called Ida. Hopefully the feed's working. So that's a little bit about me. If you'd like to learn more about me as an individual and an artist, that's all available at rulonbrown.com. But let's get into what we're really focused on today. How do we keep our instrument healthy, and how do we prevent the things that damage it and also risk our health? So I want to start by talking about sticky pad rot. This is a pile of pads that were collected from a repair shop. And as you can see, there's all sorts of lovely growing in and on that pad material. And this is what rots out the horn, makes pads leak, and becomes a really costly mess. So what causes it? What causes this pad rot? Well, we know that we need to swab our horn, and we should be doing that every time we play. That is core care to remove the dripping moisture. But we know that our students, especially young students, the moment the bell rings, they just grab their swab, and they do this religiously every time, right? No, we know that's fantasy. It doesn't happen that way. We're lucky to teach this skill to young students and then to have them actually doing it regularly at the junior high level. And some band directors even do not give their students time to clean their instrument. But we should be cleaning it, especially if we want our instrument to perform well for us. So get a quality swab, swab out your horn. It's critical basic care. There's other things that we can do to care for our instrument. There's premium pads like these gold impregnated Schmidt pads. These are really pretty exceptional, but they're a little more costly. And that's a situation where you need to work with your repair tech when you're having your instrument overhauled. So it's not common for the average sax to have something like this, but these things are available and you can look into those. There's absorbers that people try. I do not recommend using this particular style because too often people just leave it in the instrument without swabbing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of Asian manufactured knockoffs of this design that leave a lot of fuzzies and residue inside the mechanism. And that can lead to leaky pads and more work for your repair tech to clean out the instrument later. But you know, if you're in an Arctic desert situation like Alaska during the winter, your instrument is actually very, very, very dry between playing. So if you're swabbing your instrument, removing the dripping moisture, and then you put a high quality pad saver into that body tube, you're actually helping keep a base level humidity inside the instrument. So for situations like that, you know, if you use it responsibly, these actually can do some good. But you wouldn't ever want to use something like this in a tropical climate. You'll just rot the heck out of your sax. There's pad treatments. People can go crazy with this. There's voodoo juice, mojo powders, and there's silicones, and there's all sorts of oils and things that people can put on their instrument. This is something that I really do not recommend for players to goof with. If you want a pad treatment, I highly recommend you discuss it with your repair tech at time of repair for pad replacement or overhaul or repad. But generally speaking, most of them should be professionally applied evenly, consistently while the horn is disassembled. So I do not recommend this at all for the average player under normal circumstances. And then there's the old dollar bill trick, right? We've all seen this. We've maybe been taught it. It's just not a great idea. You know, if we have a sticky pad, rubbing dirty money on it that is not absorbent might get you 20 minutes further into the gig, but it's just not even really a great temporary fix, and it's not a good preventative or long-term fix. So there's other folk fixes out there like cigarette papers, baby powders, talcum powders, and lighter fluids. The powders are really messy. they can actually clog up the mechanisms. The papers, again, are a temporary solution at best. And if they have powder on them, the same thing applies. They're just going to clog up the seat of the pad. They're just going to add more gunk there into the mechanism. So I don't recommend papers and powders. Lighter fluid, you can't travel with it easily. It's not safe for children. It's flammable, but under, adult skilled supervision, there's plenty of repair techs who use the equivalent of lighter fluid, which is called naphtha. And it's a super fast evaporating solvent so that they can clean the surface of the leather pad without it absorbing deep into the felt and through the pad. And so this is commonly used in repairs. And personally, I've seen it used. I've seen people do intense tests with this. I know there's folks out there who are scared that lighter fluid is going to degrade the quality of your leather. I've seen no evidence of that when it's used properly by a professional. But again, it's not very convenient for the average player. So, keep that in mind. And we'll talk about some other alternatives. And then there's talk out there, especially on some forums, about leather conditioners and things that you can add to actually swell, soften, and bloat the leather and keep it supple. I don't recommend that. I think that when a pad is installed, leveled, and sealing properly from the repair tech, we want to maintain that condition, playability, and status as long as possible. We don't want our pads to bloat and change its reactivity to the tone hole. We want to keep it as constant as possible. So I've seen some pretty horrible things where people are like, hey, I treated my pads, and they've put in tons of oils or conditioners, and all they've done is made a soggy, bloated, oil logged mess because it's meant to penetrate that leather. So these are some things that are folk fixes that I just really don't recommend, generally speaking. But I do love science. And so I grew up as a repair tech, as a player. I was, touring and working as a player. And I just got tired of this problem of sticky pads. And I thought, what can we do about this? What's the real root problem and how do we fix it? So when looking at the root problem, we see that pads are either spring-loaded open or closed. And the closed keys rot and stick faster than the open ones. So if you have your saxophone, you can look at it right now. And you can, look at the palm keys. Chances are they're probably more leather hardened. They'll probably have a more water-stained seat ring where it sits on the tone hole. And these often need to be replaced just because they're closer to where all the moisture is and they spend their lives closed. And then we look down at the low E flat key. That's commonly called the sewer key or the gutter key. It generates a lot of money for repair techs because it needs to be replaced so frequently and it's a larger pad. That one gets a lot of drip from the body bow and it's just kind of in an inopportune place and it's closed all the time. And then we have the G sharp key, which has light spring tension that opens it. So it's only opened by spring tension. And that one often will stick, hesitate, or completely stay closed and malfunction. The same issue can be said of low C sharp. Again, spring tension on all modern saxophones, opening that up. So that's why things get sticky and either hesitate or totally malfunction. So I wondered, well, what if we leave keys open? If we look at the sax, the vast majority of the keys are already open and they're fine. They're working great. Like, why do we have this endemic problem with all the closed keys? Why don't we leave keys open to dry? So I started experimenting with that concept and I invented key leaves. This is the Saxophone Care product line that I started. This is our flagship product, the Key Leaves Sax Key Props. And they prop open the key arms. They can work by scooping under the key arm or flexing around the key cup. They never touch the pad leather and they just gently open the pesky, sticky keys by just opening them to dry. So here's a short video showing how they work. They're on a band, so they're easy to find in the case and hard to lose. They rotate, and you just lift the E flat, place it under the key arm, lift the C sharp, place it under the key arm, and now you have the E flat, the C sharp, and the G sharp by association, open to dry, because on all modern saxophones, G sharp opens when C sharp opens. So you get the 3 stickiest keys open to dry clean. So that's where I started with this. And I had some simple design goals. I wanted it safe for pads, never, risking the pad leather because it only touches the key arms. I wanted it to be safe on all finishes. That was really hard. I wanted to make sure we used a high quality silicone that wouldn't leach chemicals or off gas and tarnish silver or corrode copper or anything like that. And then we also needed it to be easy to use. And as you see in that video, it takes like 4 seconds. It's easy to use on any sax. And then I wanted it to fit all the saxophones, and that was really tricky. I found a shape, the one that I just showed you, that could fit all alto, tenor, bari, and even bass saxes, but the soprano was really tricky. So for bari and bass sax, the strap can detach and you can use it either directly on the key arm or under auxiliary arms. So you got the bari sax covered, but we were still struggling with soprano. I was trying to figure out a way to do that. Vintage as well. If you have an early vintage horn, you can use it there. It's dishwasher safe. Okay, so that's key leaves. But for the soprano, we needed to do something different. So I came up with a rigid leaf system, and these have a little bump on the top and a triangle on the bottom. And they go actually between the resonator and the tone hole. And that triangle on bottom locks it into the tone hole chimney, and the bump on top hits the resonator, not the pad leather. So there you have the C sharp pad open to dry, E flat pad open to dry, and then of course by association, G sharp is also open to dry. 3 stickiest keys open to dry clean without ever touching the pad leather. And because it's locked into the tone hole, it rotates freely, it's safe in the case, and you can just use it and go. And that got me thinking about other traditions like the end cap, right? We have this weird tradition that we've been doing forever where we just plug the end of the saxophone. No other person does that in the woodwind family. We do it to protect the octave key, but it's actually a bad idea. It traps moisture after we play in the smallest, wettest part of the sax. And it's not always fitting the sax body tube correctly. And if it does, it doesn't always fit the case correctly. And if your sax is wobbling around inside the case, you're going to get damaged. Like if you have a sax wobbling around and it takes a bump or a hit, you're going to have real bad body bends. If you look, you can see the lines where that post got bent down into the body when the case was hit hard. So I had to pay a repair tech to go in and bang that out, which is, expensive on the wallet, and it also changes the integrity of the saxophone. So based on this feedback, I created the gap cap. And the gap cap has a flexible spring wall so that it can fit perfectly inside the body tube of any maker model. And if it doesn't fit your case, you can adjust the screw top, take up any kind of loose gap in your case, and now it's holding tight. And because it flexes, it acts as a shock absorber so that any impact is absorbed and your sax isn't going to get destroyed by a bump. And also because it has that flex wall, it vents the air. So you get more airflow into the tone holes, less corrosion, less tone hole metal corrosion, less rot on the pads. And then you can add a vent vine to it. The vent vine is like a little baby cousin to the soprano product. Again, triangles on the bottom that lock into the tone holes, a bump on top that hits the resonators. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds to use, but it will open up the entire top of your sax so that the air dries clean. So that's the gap cap and the vent vine, another part of the line of Keyleaf's care products to open up and leave keys open to dry clean so that your sax lasts longer and plays better. So that's a little bit about where I come from and what led me down this massive rabbit hole of caring for the instrument in the kind of unique way, these patented ways that I do. Here's a close-up of the vent vine. This is custom fit for alto tenor. You can see how it works there. You can put it around the cap that you use, or you can use a gap cap to vent it out, things like that. So let's move quickly through this because I know we want to get into Q&A in more detail, but basically data. I have a dear friend who's a food scientist, and we were eating lunch, and not this food scientist. I have no idea where this stock photo comes from. Cracks me up though. I have no idea what she's going to do with that corn and microscope. But my buddy Jonathan, he's a absolute genius. He has multiple patents on food technologies. And he's also, in his spare time, a Oxford Press published historian. So we were eating lunch and he said to me, well, how's it going? And I said, it's going great, man. Everybody really loves the prototypes that I'm having them test. And he said, cool. So how's your patent work going? I said, it's great. I'm ready to go. I said, well, where's your data? And I said, what do you mean my data? And he said, man, you can't patent something and just say it works. You have to say it works. Here's exactly what it does. And here's the data proving how much of it does. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, that's what makes a strong patent. I'm like, okay, well, how the heck am I going to do that? He's like, well, you need to do like a field test where you test it under the most extreme conditions you can imagine. So what's the most extreme conditions you can imagine for a saxophone? I thought, well, what comes to mind is probably fifth grade band, sixth grade band. The horns are played hard for bursts. They're put away wet. They're hardly ever maintained. And he said, okay, great. So you just work with a band and you work with the students and you measure how the outcomes are. It's like, I don't trust the students to give us reliable data. Sorry, I've been a teacher too long. So he said, okay, well then here's what you do. You're gonna take two identical saxophones, brand new. You're gonna play on them for a really long time, monitoring everything that happens. And you're never gonna clean them. And you're going to do it for a long time. You're going to do it for a year, and you're even going to eat during play. And that's going to be your test, and you're going to measure everything that happens. And one of the saxophones will use the factory end cap and nothing else. And the other one will use the key lead sax key props, a vent vine, and a vented cap, like your gap cap. So we started this trial. We knew that we were going to log everything that we could about it. I bought two brand new Selmer Liberty alto saxes. These are Taiwanese made saxophones for Con Selmer. They have a large bell. They're kind of like a Cannonball Big Bell. They have a bronze body. I bought these two, from the same lot. And to Selmer's credit, these came right from the factory, playing quite well. Didn't need any sort of major adjustment. Nothing was, they were in great shape. So we were off and running with, a Taiwanese grade saxophone in good functionalities to test. So we marked one of the saxophone on the left, we marked it Sax A, and then Sax B on the right. And we went to town. We started a time-lapse photo booth with a jig that would hold the key in exactly the same spot every time. And we would take off the lowy flat pad and we would check every week to see what was happening with this pad across the year. And for those of you who have spouses or partners that love you, I can tell you that the ultimate measure of your partner's love is if they will let you set up a time-lapse pad rot photo booth in the corner of your bedroom for a year. My dear wife loves me so much, and this I know. So we started this as part of our document to find out what was going on with the pad as it matured. Here's the brand new pad being photographed for the first time. And then we also put together a Google Sheet log where we would track everything that possibly happened on any key on the sax, whether it was a hesitation, a total malfunction of the key opening, first touch stick when you get the sax out of the case and it goes when you touch the palm keys. We wanted to know anything and everything that had to do with the pads, their aging, their performance, and their function. And we started doing this, and we found some really interesting things. This is looking down the body bore of an alto sax. The one on the left is just the standard alto sax with the end cap. And then the one on the right used the vented cap, the gap cap, and the vent vine. We were stunned at how much less stuff started taking root in the body tube. Oh, and it also had key props on the bottom. So this was kind of stunning. We didn't anticipate this radical difference in what was starting to grow inside the body tube. And then if we look at the tone holes, again, here's a tone hole chimney of the high F tone hole. On the left, you can actually see these white sporous spots and the biofilm at about 12:30, 1 o'clock. You can see thick biofilm forming. But on the right, you can see some stuff. There's some white gunk a little bit, but nothing so dramatic and unhealthy and corrosive. So this was kind of a surprising result we didn't anticipate, but we were, you know, glad we could gather the information on it. And then if we look at, oh yeah, so here's arrows talking about what I just said. And then if we look at the bow of the saxophone, what was also interesting is on the left, you see there's like lots of hairs, lots of things getting stuck against the body interior because it's just growing more sticky fungus, yeast, and bacteria in there. It's attracting more lint and hairs and things that are just in the environment. Whereas the one on the right, yeah, it has some fuzzies, it has some stuff, but the big heavy hairs aren't sticking and creating more biofilm there, which we thought was, again, very interesting. And then inside the neck, this was perhaps the most shocking. This is the neck placed upside down. You can see the octave pip there on the bottoms. The one on the left, you can see there's a lot more of that corrosive growth taking root inside the body tube than on the right. And we didn't do anything different to the necks. The necks were stored the same way. They were not cleaned. But all we can guess from this research was that keeping the body tube open to dry helped even more when you're playing the actual neck and the neck is connected to the hot airflow. Kind of an odd thing, but again, kind of fun to discover as we started studying this. So not using key leaves care products meant that the sax had first touch sticking. Again, you take the sax out of the case and you have to press open your side keys or your E flat key, right? You have to crack them open to get them functional. By the fourth play session, we started to see that phenomenon happening. And then by the 19th play session, we started seeing actual key malfunction, where keys would hesitate, open slowly or not at all. And then by the 11th month, there was severe lip sores, and it was just, we just could not wait to close out this year and end this because it was just horrible lip sores. And who knows, it was just, you know, you should really clean your horns. So before we go on, speaking of lip sores, does anybody know, this is going to be for a prize. This will be for a $10 gift certificate to Kiwis. Does anybody know who this man is? Please leave it in the comments. First person to leave it in the comments wins. We don't have documentation of our lip sores, but we do have this archival footage of another lip sore. We hope you know who this is. So somebody probably has answered by now who this is, why we should know them. I'm going to go ahead and reveal the answer. This is Nigel. This is Nigel from Spinal Tap. And you need to know Spinal Tap. It's just important. It's part of our music education. All right, and then here's the words to Stonehenge. All right, so not using key leaves led to some you know, what we'd expect from abusive play conditions. But using the key leaves meant that we had radically fewer sticky key events. In total, there was never a time where we had to pry keys open by hand. We had functionality for a year. Stuck palm keys completely eliminated by using the vent vine. Stuck G sharp keys, this is pad hesitations, right? Not having to pry out open, but pad hesitations. There were only 3 pad hesitations across the year. Stuck low C sharp keys, that's again pad hesitation, 4 over the year. And then all other, I didn't put it in here, but all other made up the difference. So we find from this 98% fewer sticky keys without freaking cleaning. And this was the surprising thing. We thought that this would be like, well, it does a little bit better when you abuse your horn and you never clean it for a year. But it was radically better. It was so much better that this basically became our, you know, what we thought of as the story that we need to tell to band directors and sax players, that like, even if you are not caring for your horn, you have four seconds, you have some time in your life where you can do this and have a radically better performing instrument. So can we imagine what life would be like if people used a product like this with a swab, you know, kind of core basic care? How wonderful that would be, right? How glorious that could be for the saxophone community. So we'd have more playtime. Kids would be in their classrooms playing. They wouldn't be sitting out because their horn malfunctions. They wouldn't be interrupting the band director because their keys are sticking. Schools would have more money in their budget. because there'd be less downtime and less repair time. If you're going to a quality repair tech, they should cost $50 an hour plus parts. Overhauls are easily $1,000 and up these days. It's time away from your horn. So I'm going to go quicker through this so we can get more to questions. But basically, went out into the world with this, started picking up some pretty amazing awards from the industry: Product of the Year, Best in Show at NAMM, Best Instrument Care Tool from School Band Orchestra Magazine, so on and so forth. We were very happy about this, right? Great, we're getting awards from the industry. But what really made me happy more than that was the endorsements from elite players like the entire sax section of the Christian McBride Big Band, and then elite repair shops, places like musicmedic.com. I want to give a huge thank you to Kurt and his team. They were one of the first repair shops to embrace this approach, and they actually invited us to NAMM our first year right after we launched. Saxco UK, the world's biggest sax shop and repair shop, Meridian Winds, some of the most elite repair shops in the world were saying, yes, we absolutely need to sell this with our repairs. We need to tell players about this. We need to put this out into the world. And then elite educators were also starting to embrace it, like Julius Tolentino in New Jersey. He's involved with the Jazz at Lincoln Center program, and he runs a summer camp called J-Toll Music. So he actually co-branded the Kiwis product with his logo, and he makes these available to his summer camp, jazz camp saxophonists. So if you're interested in something like that, you can check it out at keyleaves.com/co-brand. All right, so I've talked a ton. I want to actually back out of this screen share and check in with you about your comments before I dig into what I assume are things you want to talk about. So let's just give me just a quick second. We're going to check this out. Great, people can see. Leaving saxophones on the stand, Ted Ray, rather than putting in the case. He says, I think that this helps keeping the pads dry, but really don't know. Ted, you're right. If you can keep your saxophone, especially if you, like right now, if you can see this, I have this on a stand next to my screen. I've got the key leads on the bottom, opening up the bottom of the horn, the middle of the horn with the G sharp. I've got the vent vine on. If you can do that on the stand after you play and let it air out at room temperature, that is a huge advantage. Not every pro player has time to do that. Sometimes you're just running from the gig and you got to, get it in the case and transport. But you're right, that's a great thing to do. And I know Donna Schwartz is on this this conversation right now. She does that in her teaching studio. She's been doing that for years. So that is something that's great to do if you can do it. Okay, used to lacquer started to deteriorate from the so not keeping in the case. Oh, somebody's saying that leaving it out started to deteriorate lacquer. That's pretty intense. I'm not sure I understand that. Sean O'Neill, please leave another comment about that. Dental hygiene. Someone is talking about dental hygiene. Great. Terry Schmidt. So before we play, if we can, we should brush our teeth. At the very least, we should rinse out our mouth. If we can rinse and spit, it's a great help. If we can, even if we just swish and swallow, something to get what's in our mouth out of the way so that our playing chamber in the embouchure is as clean as we can make it. That is a huge help. And then the other thing about dental hygiene is, actually, I don't want to get into that right now because that's body chemistry. We might talk about body chemistry later if there's questions about it. Ted Ray asked, do key leaves that keep the closed keys open affect spring tension? No. In 2 years of testing our prototypes with pros, repair techs, and teachers and students, we never once had anybody say that their action changed. And now in 3 years, selling the product worldwide with the world's greatest sax players using it, Tim McAllister, Gerald Albright, Jaleel Shaw, great repair techs. We've just not had any reports of that. If you look at your needle spring tension, I'm actually going to go to the close-up cam here. Nathan, if you can bring me into this close-up cam, I'm going to show this. So you see, like, I'm going to look at this. this low C sharp spring. I'm turning on a light. You see the needle spring right there going along this key. And if I rotate here, can you see that spring right there? See that blue steel needle spring under there? When this key is moved, oh, go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. So when this key is moved, the very tip of this needle spring, and this needle spring is about 1.5 inches long. That needle spring, the tip moves about 1/8 of an inch at most. And that's when it's fully open. So that's the thing we need to remember about needle springs and springs in our saxophone. They're made of material that's actually really meant to hold that metal memory. And they're only moving very slightly at the tip. And the arc of the spring is what creates that memory. So that's why you can get a vintage saxophone that is 40, 60, 70 years old, take it to a repair tech, and a good repair tech can just gently finesse those very aged, decades and decades aged springs and salvage your springs most of the time because they're meant to have that memory. So the short answer is no, then I just gave you the super detailed answer. All right, I'm gonna turn off that light because it's blinding me. I'm gonna go back here, look at this. Gap Cap is the best, thank you so much. Lots of laughs, Rulon. Nigel, Elliot Z, you win. Elliot Z, send me an email, info@keyleaves, and I'll get you that $10 gift card. Nigel from Spinal Tap. Nathan, you got it, Spinal Tap. I'm a vet. Okay, Ted Ray. I'm a veteran player who never swabbed my horns. After my last repair visit, realized I needed to up my game on this. I'm a Keyleaves believer now. Oh, right on, Ted. That's cool. I'm glad that hopefully your repair tech hipped you to this. That's great. And don't drink anything but water while practicing. I agree. Semi-tropical place, so there's a lot of humidity. Yes, tropical environments are a real problem. I used to live in Costa Rica, and that's actually what inspired me to create. That's part of what inspired my thinking to create Keyleaves. I lived in Costa Rica for a while, and horns react differently in that much intense humidity. Okay. Okay, any issues with the vine or leaves coming dislodged in the case during transit? Terry Schmidt asked this question. The short answer is for this one, for the key leaves, the sax key props that go on the bottom, no. When you put these in, they're in under the key arm. If you look, let me go here, they're soft and squishy. So, you put this in a case, even in gig bags. One of our endorsers, Nick Toretta, really amazing composer, sax player, he uses a Conn Chewberry tenor sax in a Reunion Blues leather gig bag. I would never use a gig bag. I don't believe in them. I call them dent bags, but he loves it. And he's been using this product now. He was one of our earliest testers. He's been using it for 5 years in a gig bag. So even in a really bump prone gig bag, we've never had situations and problems with this. Now for the vent vine, this is not for your average beginning student or middle schooler, right? This is a pro care device. And so let me take this out so I can show it to you. This one is meant to be locked down in. Let's see, can you see that triangle? This is my old dirty one I use. The bump on top, the triangle on bottom. So if I'm taking this and I open up the high F sharp and I wiggle and I lock it into that tone hole, it's not going anywhere. That down pressure from that key is holding it locked in safely without touching the pad leather, just the resonator. And as I talk, I'm going to do this so that you can see, after you've done it a while, you can see how it goes. So all I have to do is put this on, and then after it's on, I lay it into my case without bumping the keys, right? I'm not going to manhandle the side E or anything like that. I just take it, I lay it into my case safely, and I'm good to go. If my case is super loose or has really weird padding, I might bump this, or if I have super extreme.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
Oh, someone's not muted. If you could please mute maybe. So this one you need to exercise some kind of discernment, right? This is more advanced care for the top of your horn. But if you have a quality case and you use it and you lay it in safely, you're good to go, especially if you use the gap cap. You know, the gap cap, you can extend up and take up ridiculous amounts of slack in your case. If your case is looser than this, if you have a case that's that loose, you know, you need to look at maybe getting a different case. I mean, that's extreme looseness. So I hope that answers that question. Okay. Oh, Cindy Pruitt. Hi, Cindy. We talked one time. I remember you, Cindy. Cindy's asking, do you suggest taking the neck off and using gap cap all the time? That's a good question. I'm going to share two thoughts about leaving the neck on the sax body while it's on the stand. The first is I've got a 11-year-old daughter who's learning sax, and I want her to play that thing as frequently as she wants. So we put it on the stand, and I tell her to take the reed off so that she can learn about reed care and drying it flat and so on. But she's been leaving that neck on, and it starts to corrode. It gets that moisture, the heat from playing, and it starts to corrode and become nasty, and you can get into troubles with that. And I don't know if anybody saw this in the this would have been the late 80s. There were some sax stands that were like little triangles, and you would lock the bell into the triangle and it would hold your sax like this, and then the neck would come up like that. Does anybody ever have one of those? I had one of those when I was in like 6th grade. It was horrible, man. I would love to. Yeah, okay. That is so. So here's the thing. Nathan has one, okay, and they actually make them better now. They're way more secure. They hold the rim. If you're gonna do it and you need to do it and you've cleaned out the horn, it's better. But I was a kid, right? And like I put it away wet like that. I actually corroded the neck on to the body tube so badly that when we went to go take it off, my dad couldn't get it off, and he tore the whole neck tendon socket off the body. And we had to take that to the repair tech and like, oh, we suck. And the repair tech kind of laughed, and he's like, yeah, get rid of that stand, you know, or start cleaning your horn. So yeah, there's me and my story of not cleaning my horn so badly and storing it on a stand with the neck on so much that I tore my Armstrong 3000 neck socket off.
The other thing about that stand, it freaks me out because it sits so low to the ground. It looks like somebody not paying attention could just walk right into it.
Yeah, and you have 2 points that it can pivot off, right? If somebody bumps the back or if somebody bumps the front, you're just gonna, you know, like a top, that thing's just gonna be spinning off.
Yep.
But I mean, everybody's got their own style.
Slides in the pocket. That's the one good thing about it.
The what?
It slides in the case pocket real easily.
Oh, right on. Yeah. That's good. While we're talking about stands, this is my favorite travel stand right now for super compact footprint. These K&M jazz stands, they really compact down and fit in the bell. And for me, that's like truly in the bell storage. But then there's Woodwind Design makes a carbon fiber thing that's just phenomenal. But because I go to trade shows a lot with saxophones and I have really limited desk space, I need the smallest stand footprint I can get. So that's why I use that K&M. But the Woodwind Designs carbon fiber thing is just stupid light, crazy light, compacts down into like a toothbrush size tube. It's amazing. Okay. Will there be a Barry gap cap key leaves? So 2 questions. Will there be key leaves for Barry? Yes, there already are. Please go to keyleaves.com, check out the advanced features. You take your key leaf sax key props, you pop off the leaf shaped props, you double up the strap, and then you put the strap back onto one of the props. So this is what works for your Barry. You get that longer reach. Stephen Banks, really amazing classical saxophonist professor. Ron Blake, the Barry sax player for Saturday Night Live band. Ryan Soranich of Brit Floyd. Those guys play Barry in super intense situations. They're all doing this for Barry. As far as gap cap, no, we're not going to make a gap cap for Barry because Barry should not be secured via the neck socket. The saxophone has too much mass, too much length that can be bent, and too many solder points for it to be secured only at the smallest body bore diameter of the neck socket. I don't believe in it. I don't want to do that. Instead, Barry sax cases need to be built better. I have a real pet peeve with Barry sax cases. Most of the time, they just suck. They hold the keys clamped closed in wrong places that are going to bend posts, or they don't actually support the mass of the body tube where there are no keys. I would love to see better Barry sax tech, but unfortunately, often you have to pay a lot for it. Okay. Any future podcasts in the works? I get asked to do this a lot. I'd love to do more like this. Wow, we're already 50 minutes into this. Holy cow. Yeah, I guess we should. We should do more. Thanks, Terry. Can you post the name again of the stand? Yes, Cindy, that is the K&M Jazz sax stand. They call it the Jazz stand. Somebody posted that. Microfiber absorbers, closing the kit, so pulling it out. Oh, Jim Holt has a good question. He's asking about the. I forgot about this. I guess I'm free forming it today, but Jim Holt's asking about the dollar bill trick. What's better? This is better. This is a spit sponge. This is something that I created based on the feedback of repair techs and actually Ron Blake. Ron Blake came to me and he's like, man, I really think you should make a pad dryer. I'm like, well, I'm already leaving your keys open to dry clean. Why do you need a pad dryer? He's like, well, I'm playing so much. And of course, it's live TV. I need that peace of mind knowing that I've got every bit of dripping moisture off the tone hole and the pad. And that's what a pad dryer gives me. I'm like, oh, fair enough. Right on. Okay, fair enough. So, so I looked at what was out there right now on the market, and I decided I wanted to do something different. I wanted a different shape, and I wanted better function. So this is a super, super thin pad dryer, thin enough that it can fit the woodwind size, fits in piccolo pads and oboe pads. Extremely thin, but still a really cool micro knit that absorbs intensely. So of course you can use let me take out the key to use Saxy props. So if you have like a C# pad you want to dry, you can of course just take it, kind of fold it like a pizza, or handle it, or wrap it around the body tube like that, and it just goes in, and you're going to be able to dry the pad that way. That's a good way to go. Otherwise, you can take it and you can use this kind of fine end here. Again, I'm just folding it like a pizza. You can get into key work. You can do whatever you need to do here, get high keys, whatnot. So this is the pad dryer that I made and recommend, because it works on more instruments more easily. It fits into the oboes, fits into the piccolo keys. It is laser marked with a groove texture on the bottom. I don't know if that will show up in this light. Maybe if I turn this on. Can you see that micro groove texture in there? It's actually a picture of a saxophone. So rather than just stamp cutting this, we laser engrave it. We actually create a micro groove texture into this, so that if there is stuff on the tone hole, it's going to trap and remove it off the tone hole surface. So that's what I recommend. And it's it's like $5.99. It's washable, lasts for years. You don't need powders and papers and all that stuff. Someone's talking about spit sponge if you're a tenor player. Yeah, let me show you this, because often on tenor we get drips on our upper left hand. That's the other thing about this. I wanted something that would allow you to dry really fast. So let me move this down a little bit. Can you see my upper stack here? If I take this, and I'm just kind of, again, just barely folding it just to give it some rigidity. And I just take this, I bring it into my upper stack, and then I take the handle. This becomes like a little handle. And then I can just go, and boom, I've dried my whole upper stack, no more drips, and I'm good to go. So this is kind of for me, it became a lifesaver when I'm playing tenor, so that I can dry out the stack and not constantly be going like this, trying to keep my pearls, dry enough that I can actually play. So there's that. Someone mentioned it for the palm keys. Sticky sound if they do have a spit sponge. Okay. Yes, you can rewash the spit sponges. What we recommend is just get some hand soap, scrub like you would any sort of fiber, just kind of rub it back and forth, get good suds, rinse it out entirely, and then lay it on a surface to dry totally flat. And it's going to help rejuvenate it, give it that nice, clean, flat feel. Especially the COVID shutdown. I use key leaves and I slip pillowcases over the horns. Seems to have very good air circulation. It keeps the horns and the mechanisms free of dust. I use the spit sponges as I'm playing. I may be juicier than average. Hey, we've all been there, right? We know it varies. Some people are really dry players, some are not. But especially in doubling, have to hold the tenor on my lap for a quick, cool. Great. All right, so thanks for all these comments. I'm gonna hop back into now some other tricks. We've already gone an hour. I don't know how much y'all want me to keep going on this stuff. Seems like we have a good cohort here. There's a lot of folks involved. So I will go ahead and just dig into some things that I think might be useful. Let me go back to, why don't we talk about cleaning an oil? Okay, so if we have something that doesn't feel right on our saxophone, or if it's loud and clacky, that can be symptoms of things that are going on with the key mechanism. So I want to talk about that right now. Okay, I'm gonna take this old beat up Kong, right? And I want you to just listen to this key mechanism. Right there, we're missing a bumper. You hear how clacky this bottom stack is? It's got all kinds of nasty stuff going on here. So if we get close up on this horn, I'm gonna, Nathan, let me go to the close-up cam. I'm gonna turn on the light here. So if you can see this, and granted, this is just a beat up old horn that I use for example, but why are we so clacky on this? Do you hear how clacky it is? Let me show you why we're clacky. So if you can look at this, do you see how that wiggles up and down? We get really close. See how that's wiggling? Let me get another good example here. Let me find another good one. Oh, there we go. See this? This is in the upper stack. It's the B finger. Often it's the B finger and the F because our hands tend to push down on them. And we have a lot of side rubbing on the key rods. This one is loose. Do you see how much that jiggles? So that can cause clacking, and that's not something that we can fix. We need to take that into a repair tech and have them fit the keys properly. That's where we want to pay for the expert to get our action properly adjusted, properly fit, so it's not loud and clacky. But it might not be a mechanical wear issue like that. It could also be an issue of oil. If you're not oiling your instrument, you need to. This is just an oiler you can buy. There's all kinds out there. The ones that I recommend have just a needle tip, so that you can quickly do this, and it's one small drop. So let me see if I can do this with this light. Well, let me put my hand behind it. Maybe that will focus it. So right here, can you see that? That's the hinge point where the two keys float on this rod. And so I want to oil right there at that hinge point. But before I do, look at this screw. Look at this screw rod. You see that? See how the slot on that screw, let me get really close. Can you see that? Maybe not. Maybe it won't fall. Well, right there. See how the screw is turning with the key? If you're having weird issues or sounds and things like that happening, especially if the key's not floating freely, if I look at this one, the screw's not turning. This is floating freely, but this key is binding. It's binding on the rod. So that's a trick you can use to find out, hey, is it my mechanism that needs to be repaired? Or is it oil? Or is it key fitting? All these things can be things that help you decide, okay, I got to get this into the shop, or wow, I better quiet down this mechanism with some oil. So before I oil this, this is off of my 1964 Mark VI. It's been sitting for probably a year. I'm not using it heavily now. So let me take off this rod. And if you look at this rod, you can see it's got a lot of black grime on it. Can you see that kind of grime, right? But look what else we learned. When I do that, it barely gets off any oil. It's dry. So we have a dry, grimy rod that is binding on one of the two keys. And we can know that because we look at the end of the rod and we can see how it turns with the key. So these are things that you want to start to be thinking of as you're like, well, is it a loose key? Is it a binding key? Is it floating on the rod freely, or does it need oil? And you can start to look for these things. I mean, you don't have to expect yourself to be an expert overnight, but this is a kind of familiarity you want to try to get. So now I'm going to really wipe off this rod. I'm going to try to get it clean, right? I'm changing the oil essentially, right? I'm taking off that old, dry, corroded, funky oil, and now I have a nice clean rod. See how clean that is? And I don't have much going on there. And for sake of this demonstration, I'm not going to unbind that key. Instead, I'm going to take the one that is clean and not binding. You see that? Totally not bound. And I'm going to show you how we would oil. So if we're doing this, let me put this key back together. So one tiny drop, just that. That's all we need. Right there, right at the joint, and the capillary effect is just going to suck that in onto the rod. And same thing right there. One drop. That's all you need. You do that about once every 45 to 60 days, depending on how much you're playing, and that will help keep your instrument quieter, and it will help it feel and respond actually much nicer in the action. The other thing that happens is often we'll get very loud rollers. Sometimes we'll be playing, we'll hear like a as we're playing. That's these rollers sometimes, oftentimes. And so one thing that can help with that is to get just a grease, a pivot and roller lubricant. This is sold by Music Medic. I like this. It's quite heavy. As you can see, it's got a pretty high viscosity, really goopy stuff. You take a tiny dab of that. You unscrew your roller, put a dab of that, and you're still going to get great action on your rollers, but they're not going to vibrate and create that sound as you're playing. So that's just something to think about there as far as oiling your instrument. Now that's stuff we can do, right? That's something we can do to care for the instrument, and it helps really reduce the wear on the mechanism. But the other thing we should be considering is at least once a year, get into a trusted repair tech and have your horn cleaned, oiled, and adjusted, COA. It's a mechanism. It has fluids in it. It has tight tolerances. Having the horn checked out, cleaned, and adjusted can do wonders for the life of your action. And the action affects so much of what you feel in the moment when you're playing. All right, so we talked about binding on the rod. We talked about cleaning and adjustment, oil and grease. Let me check in with questions here since I'm just talking. I don't want to talk too much. Someone said, "What's that pivot lubricant?" Oh, this lubricant is straight up key oil. I think it's Selmer key oil. I don't use any special key oils right now because I'm not doing intense repairs frequently like I used to. This is good enough for me. It's just straight up key oil. You can buy it online. I think there's a tiny little pen type that I forget who makes it. I think maybe Con Selmer. It's like a pen vial with a tiny little pen dispenser. Anything like that'll work. I don't travel with key oil. I just make a point of doing it regularly. Someone asked about new products coming up. Yes. We're going to have a product for oboe coming up and some other stuff coming up that I'm really excited. Can't really talk about it now, but yes, there'll be some other things. Okay, so now let's talk about leaks. I want to go to how we feel for action. Okay, so let me see. Where's my example of this? I'll do it here. I'll do it here. Okay, so if we are, oh, the pivot, this one, this is called Ultimax, pivot and roller lubricant, Ultimax from, wow, this really won't focus well. Ultimax from Music Medic. That's where I got it. They make a bunch of various viscosity lubricants, and they can tell you all about it. Those guys are like down the rabbit hole deep into sax tech. Okay, so let's imagine that you're playing and you go to play your low C sharp. You hit your low C sharp, or you hit a low B, or you hit a low B flat, and all of a sudden it just doesn't, it's not ringing. It's like you got to work harder. So what could that be? Let's start there, because this is a common problem, right? We're playing and all of a sudden the bottom of our horn just gets fuzzy or resistant and it's not working for us. What can we do to diagnose it? First, we look for a key alignment, and we do that by taking the light. Here I've got a heavy light source coming into the pads this way, and I put my eye and I try to cover it up, and I look down into the body and I open the C sharp, and I make sure that I can see the C sharp ceiling, and I look at the B flat, and how much light pressure does it take to close that key entirely? And then I look at the B, the B, and then I look at the B flat. Are they closing together and clean? Just doing that will reveal a lot about your horn. Chances are, and repair techs see it all the time, chances are you might have been touring and your case got a bad bump, or the sax got set down on the stand real aggressively, or any number of things might be able to do it. But your bell actually gets banged or rotated. And so now your pad, rather than closing clean right here and here, you've got it closing too much at the back, or something's rotated out of whack and it's closing too much at the front. And maybe it's the key is bent, or maybe the bow is out, the bow has shifted, or the bell has shifted. So if that's the case, I don't recommend you do anything to try to fix that. I recommend you take it to a repair tech and you play as high as you can for the gig. Don't play down low. And just know that this is a repair tech issue that needs to be dealt with carefully, professionally. There are things I could teach if we were in a repair class, but I don't want to give that to general public right now. That's not something general public should be trying. You need to know a lot more about the instrument to learn the techniques of how to adjust the bell. So that's a diagnostic thing. Literally, get your head down in there and check that you can see the pad closing. That's going to rule out a major body or key malfunction. And it could be, and this is something to be thinking about, when we put our sax down on the stand, sometimes the stand has those little footy things that hit, hopefully right here on the bell ring. If not, it might bump this key. I've seen that happen, where the stand is hitting close enough to the low C sharp that it actually bends the C sharp key a little bit. And that you can tell by looking at the seat itself. Is the seat hitting cleanly where it looks like it should hit? Okay, so there's a way to diagnose the low end, and if you have a leak actually in the low end. But often it's not anything to do with the low end. It actually has to do with the upper, right? We can have a leak up here, and commonly, if you feel it suddenly coming on below low C, it's probably a G sharp. It might be that your G sharp adjustment screw is letting this come up a little bit. So how would we feel for that action? What can we do to feel and diagnose that in real time? Because if you're a serious player, you've got some sort of screwdriver in your case, right? Just a flathead screwdriver, doesn't have to be anything fancy, some sort of flathead screwdriver, right? So I'm gonna make this out of adjustment real quick to express what I'm talking about. And when you're using a screwdriver, make sure you don't put your hand behind it, right? You never screwdriver this way so that if you slip, you impale your hand. That's no fun. Okay, so again, I'm getting real close up. Let me see if I can get close up here. Can you see that G sharp flicking right there? So if I'm playing down and I play low C and then I hit low B, C sharp, B flat, I'm going to get that fuzzy kind of feeling as I play because this is out of adjustment. So what can I do without a leak light, without anything? How can I feel that misalignment, that misadjustment? And as sax players, we're not really trained to do this. You ask any oboe player or serious oboe student, they got a million adjustment screws on their oboe. They're adjusting them in real time, depending on the music sometimes. They're accustomed to it. They're trained by their teachers how to do this. But we don't share this as sax players as frequently. So check this out. All you're going to do is you're going to take the F sharp in your finger, and you're going to open the G sharp key, and you're going to gently feel. You feel that? Shouldn't be able to make that sound. It should be that sound, not that sound. That's the sound of it hitting a little bit. So you notice how you can feel how these interactions happen. Another example would be this key right here. This is the F sharp, which closes with our E finger, right? So if you want to hear if this is actually an adjustment, you hear how that's hitting the leather clean? And then you come down here, pretty good, that's hitting as well. So we have both those keys hitting clean with fairly light key pressure. But if we had a clack, 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 more of a clacky or a shallow, not as much of a pop, 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 but more of a shallow sound, then that would be a problem of adjustment here. So you can actually be feeling your action, looking for these issues. And then if that's the issue, the G sharp's the one you want the most. Don't worry about bis adjustment as much. The G sharp is going to be vital for you to get those low notes. So then all you do is you just gently and slowly, in maybe even eighth turns. Oh, still there. You just slowly adjust that G sharp down until you get rid of that play. It's almost gone. Almost gone. And you don't want to be pressing too hard on this. You want gentle pressure. That's pretty good. It's still a little there. I don't know if you can hear it on my mic. I'm trying to get my ear as close as I can to it. And there, it's gone. See how that's gone now? We don't have any of that additional space causing the slap. And we're still getting a good pad sound out of this, which means we didn't drop the screw here so low that this is now not closing. So now we've adjusted that. We're going to be able to play down low, and maybe that was all it was that G sharp adjustment. Okay, and this, depending on what your key materials are here, like this is just cork. Okay, cork is going to be more reactive to moisture and humidity change than like a rubber. Oftentimes they'll do a rubber or some sort of synthetic there to be super stable. And a good repair tech for pro care will often round it so that it has just a very nice, clean, solid point. So depending on the caliber of your instrument and how it's being set up, that can also affect if you're traveling and whatnot. And this is an adjustment that any sax player, any serious sax player can diagnose, listen for, feel for, and adjust. And then you should be able to get that nice poppy sound of everything closing clean. Okay, so that's how we feel and we listen into the action. Do we have any questions? Okay, good. No questions about that. Let's now look at listening. We kind of did some listening. We talked about G sharp, bis. Does the technique work for Barry too? Oh yeah, absolutely. The technique will absolutely work for Barry. It's a little trickier because the top crook changes the way it feels and sounds. It sounds in the high register. But if you're getting your ear close to it, you can still hear it doing this same thing. This adjustment on all modern saxes is the adjustment. You've got the G sharp adjustment screw and the bis B flat adjustment screw. And in all honesty, unless it's if it's a student horn and the budget's not great and they're not actually paying to really finally tune the instrument, often repair techs won't even worry tons about this, the finer points of this Bis adjustment, because they know that the average student is not using F or F sharp to do Bis B flat trills. You know, but for a pro player, absolutely, you get it exactly right. You know, for an advanced player, this should be dialed in. But yes, it does work for Barry. Oh, it looks like the phone camera has a lag, I'm being told. So let me stop here. I'm going to go back to the other one and get on this one. Okay, so we talked a little bit about that. Let me go back and talk about some other tricks that can help you. I'm going to share screen. Feel free to ask other questions as you have them. I will share screen on this and we'll get into some other things that we can do. So more tips and tricks. Never put your case upside down. If we think about it, most of the tone holes are generally facing up when the case is right side up. But if we put the case upside down, we turn all those tone hole chimneys into drip channels for any residual moisture. And it's all going to go right to the edge of the tone hole and drip onto the pad. So don't do that. Avoid it whenever you can. And if you see your students doing it, tell them to stop. Put it right side up. And for that matter, if you can store the case on its end, you see these rubber bumpers on the end, if you can store it upright as if it was being played, you have even less dripping and standing moisture. So sugars, we talked about dental hygiene. If you are drinking any kind of yeasty beer drink, sugary beer drink, sugary soda, it's absolutely going to destroy the mechanism of your instrument. It's just how it is. If you do that, there's nothing that's going to stop the stick in your instrument. So don't do it. It's death to saxophones and really any instrument. Ambient temperature. Be mindful of your ambient temperature, right? If you are playing in an outdoor environment that is super humid, and then you're traveling and it's like really arid and dry, your sax is going to be reactive. And you want to keep it as unreactive as you can, right? You want to keep it in good, clean adjustment, and you want to be mindful of that when you're looking at the instrument, and make sure you take the time to really clean it out, care for it, because your condensation is going to be dramatic in a cold environment. You're going to be putting so much more fluid and condensation into that mechanism when you're in that kind of setting. So be mindful of that, especially if you're working with, you know, marching bands, things like that. Use the key leads between sessions. We talked about that. You can use them on the stand. Use the products that way. It's pretty easy to do, and you know that's how I use it. I just lay it over the stand, and that reminds me to use it. Here's a trick if you have an emergency pad break. So this is an old pad. Clearly, it should have been replaced. It's got mold and fungus growing on it, but finally it's torn and it's not going to seal. And it happened on the gig because you know you're just touring so much. You're so famous. You're touring constantly. You didn't have time to get into the shop. And so what do? This is an emergency pad repair that I love. This has been around for a while. Keep some saran wrap with you or plastic wrap, the thick, heavy-duty stuff. And you just then fold it around the business end of the pad, and you're going to twist it at the top. And if you have a little tape, you can, you know, tape that down, or you can rubber band it down, whatever you got around you. It's a powerful signal. If you're doing this for a student, like if you're a band director and you're doing this for a student, it's a powerful signal to that student, like, hey, this is not normal. You need to get this horn repaired. And it's a powerful reminder to you to get it in and get it repaired. So definitely ugly, but functional, and it will hopefully get you through the gig with an emergency pad tear repair. What else? Yeah, don't let it stay that way. Emergency. Okay, blow the water off your pads. What I mean by this is after you're done playing, especially on tenor and things like that, after you're done playing, you're going to have standing water on the pads and the tone holes here. So you want to open them up, face away from a player, you know, face away from the band or people, and you're just going to go. Just doing that is going to remove so much of that moisture that swabs miss. And you can do the same things over here on your E and F sharp. doing that, right? Because everything above the left hand is left to rot. So do that after you play. Blow that moisture off the horn. And that's really going to help. Are there key leads for flutes? No. Tell me what you think you'd want and message me. Let's have a conversation about it. I haven't gone there with flutes because generally speaking, flutists don't have the same sort of mechanical malfunction issues we do. They have more direct drive G sharps, more direct drive mechanisms that don't have passive springs that get sticky. So it just, plus they have segments. The foot joint comes off, so it's more aerated, gets a little more airflow. So I haven't gone there with flutes. Could, if you're passionate about it, message me. Okay, let me get back. We talked about blowing off the keys. That's very useful and free. And then spit sponge, we talked about that. It's laser scribed, so it can remove more gunk off the tone hole. Washable, yeah, laser. Sharks with freaking lasers, right? Everybody needs that. Have a cleaning party. Treat yourself. Clean out your mouthpiece. Clean out your horn. We talked about necks. Yeah, this is just, again, a close-up of what grew where. Pad and tone hole cleaning. So I mentioned what I don't like. This is what I do like lately. If you are going to take off a pad and you are going to actually clean your pad, first of all, realize you're doing something that is more advanced. This is something that a repair tech does for you. But, you know, for instance, let's say like, here's my low C and low E flat. If you can tell which one's closed and which closed, open, right? If I was going to clean this off, I really like this stuff. Laurel Partine of Tim's Music in Sacramento, we were talking about this at a repair clinic. And she said she really likes this because it's ammonia free. It's very foamy, so it doesn't want to actually soak down into the pad material. You don't want the pad material to be soaked with things. You just want to clean gently the surface. So this is a foaming glass cleaner that's very friendly for the environment and the user. You can just take a little bit, spritz it on, rub gently, clean it off, and that will help clean your pads if you need to do that. That's one option. But again, you don't even need to go there really if you do cleaning oil and adjustment once a year with a respected technician, and you use your key leaves and your swab and you're taking care of your horn. But I wanted to share that because I know some people just love to get into it this way. They love to take stuff apart and clean it, and that's their passion. Okay, so hopefully that's useful if that's something you want to get into. I don't recommend teachers to do it. You don't have time in your day to do that. Still inspire kids. All right, what's next? Surface cleaner, right? We talked about that. It's gentle on the pad seat. Yeah, be gentle. Avoid soaking the leather with anything. And this does not replace the benefit of working with a skilled repair tech for cleaning oil and adjustment. Soprano sax, we talked about. Here's a close-up. Swab it out. Right now, my favorite soprano swab is actually the Hodge clarinet swab. I renamed it here. Our favorite soprano sax swab. You can get these at Kiwis.com. You can get them all over. I really like how they work. I have a Series 3 that has 2 neck options. I find that this fits through the neck Octave Pip very well. It has that slender weight that works well. Make sure you're swabbing your instrument. And then a trumpet mouthpiece brush to clean out the necks. These things are like a couple bucks, but the necks of our sopranos can gather so much gunk. So, get a trumpet mouthpiece brush and clean that out. Make sure that you're really keeping that octave pip clean and nothing starting to take root around the octave pip. And just so we're clear about what an octave pip is, we have 2 octave pips on our sax. We have this, you see that little bump there? That bump goes down into the body tube to catch the vibration and adjust the frequency there. But then we also, I'm going to show you on the alto since it's easier. We also have a secondary octave pip right there. So we have 2 octave pips and we want to keep them. Oh, I don't have my neck on. See that one? There we go. So there's our secondary octave pip. And when we look into the body tube of the horn, you can see it right there. See it going down in? That's the octave pip. Right there. So we want to clean that out for our sopranos especially. Okay, let's go back to this. The unswabbables. Barry sax can get so funky. I love this photo. If you haven't checked out the Band Instrument Repair Horror Stories group on Facebook, it is hilarious. I love it. Craig Chrisman shared this photo. And from the outside of the berry, that could look like a lot of professional berries, but the inside is just a alien factory. So one thing that you can do is be sure to use a berry swab. On the left is the H&W Pad Saver style. On the right is the Hodge swab silk covered foam. I tried them both. I personally prefer the Hodge just because I feel like it absorbed a lot more and I could handle it easier. But both are good options to try to clean out the top crook of your berry. And then also ask your repair tech about partial chem cleans. If you have a berry and you're playing a lot, you know, it can save them time to and save you money because all they're doing is they're dismantling the top of your berry, giving it a partial chem clean, really cleaning out that top crook and getting you back on the road. And they're doing it in the place that's hardest to clean. What else we got here? Oh, Stephen Beggs, Ron Blake, Ryan Soranich. We talked about how they're using the advanced features of the Kiwis product. I get a lot of questions about key clamps. Key clamps, I don't like them. I think that they do more harm than good. But here's the official statement to the general public on it. Happy to answer more questions about it if you have it. So clamping keys is sometimes useful when mailing saxophones or rough handling them as checked baggage, but it's discouraged for daily use because clamping traps rotting moisture on the pad leather and the tone hole. The best way to keep saxophone pads healthy and stable across all climates is to leave keys open to dry with key leaves. That said, there are players who use key leaf products daily and then clamp keys when they travel. Donna Schwartz is a good example of that. She uses it sometimes if she has to check a sax. The reason I don't like key clamps is they over compress the pad leather and the felts. And anytime you take something that is porous and spongy and organic, like wool felts and leather, you're going to leather harden, you're going to hyper compress, and then make those fibers reactive to humidity change. So it actually increases the pad leather hardening, and it makes all the pads less stable across climate and humidity change. So it's just not a good way to keep an instrument stable and playing well. And if you do use clamps, you're probably a professional repair tech like Thomas Ohm. You're seating the pads temporarily, you take these off, and then that's it. Like these are key clamps used for short periods of time by professionals to put the proper amount of pressure and seat in. And oftentimes repair techs won't even use this. Oftentimes they won't even use that much pressure. This is the most extreme example of when I think key clamps are acceptable, and it's under professional direction and skill for a very short limited time. So that's an old slide from what this slideshow was adapted from. That's basically what I've got to share with you. I really appreciate all this. I just want to, again, see if there's any other questions or comments. Otherwise, we can kind of wind down and get into the Super Bowl, I guess. So if you have any other questions, please share them now. My name is Rulon Brown, and this has been a real pleasure for me. I appreciate all your questions and curiosities and what you're doing and what you're experiencing with these issues and these things that we do on our sax. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Adriana. Great. Oh, Sweden. Jesper, thank you from Sweden. Right on. Great. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. It looks like we are kind of winding down. Again, thank you to Nathan Knabb. Thank you to the Saxophone Studio class online for having me. Please learn more about all these products I'm talking about at keyleaves.com. And you can always message me directly with any questions you have. info@keyleaves.com. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great time playing your instrument and that this has been beneficial to your musical journey. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to close it down.